You can feel it, even if you can't explain it. The pull in your spirit that wakes you in the middle of the night, the ache in your chest that no amount of distraction can numb. There are moments when you lie there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, whispering questions into the silence that never seem to echo back. "God, are you still there?" you ask, hoping that maybe this time something, anything will answer. The air feels heavy, the room still, and all you can hear is your own heartbeat, slow, uncertain, searching. The truth is, you've been walking through a season that feels like exile, like the world you knew has been stripped away piece by piece, and no one seems to understand the language your soul is speaking. You're surrounded by people, yet somehow you've never felt more alone. It's as if life has dimmed, as if heaven itself went quiet. You start to wonder if you've done something wrong, if maybe you've disappointed God, or if you've lost His favor. You replay every memory of His presence, the moments when you could feel Him so vividly, when His signs seemed clear and His voice felt near. And now, in the silence, those memories feel like distant dreams. But what if I told you that this silence isn't absence? What if I told you that this void you feel is not the end of your connection, but the deepening of it? You see, God doesn't always speak in thunder. Sometimes He whispers beneath the noise. Sometimes He removes every voice around you so that when He speaks again, you'll recognize His tone without question. The pain you're feeling right now, the confusion, the loneliness, the waiting, isn't evidence that God has left you. It's evidence that He's rebuilding you, because there comes a moment in every chosen one's journey when the divine stops showing up in the ways you expect, not to punish you, but to prepare you for something greater than your understanding can yet hold. This is the space where He begins to rewire your soul for higher frequency. You've outgrown certain energies, certain attachments, certain illusions, and the silence is heaven's surgery room, where the old parts of you are being gently removed. What you're experiencing isn't abandonment, it's alignment. You're being stripped not because God wants to leave you empty, but because He's making room for something eternal. And right now, even if you can't feel it, the unseen hand of love is holding you tighter than ever. The world won't understand this process. They'll see you falling apart, but heaven sees you being remade. Every tear that slips down your face isn't wasted. It's holy. It's data for destiny. It's water for the seeds of purpose planted deep within you. You are being undone by love itself. You are being stretched into the person who will carry divine authority without arrogance, compassion without compromise, strength without pride. You are not being punished, you're being purified. And that's why it hurts so much, because transformation always does. You may not realize it yet, but every unanswered prayer, every delay, every betrayal, every silent night has been designed to bring you here, to this exact point where faith has no evidence, and yet you still choose to trust. That's what separates the chosen from the called. Anyone can praise when God is loud, but only the deeply loved can still believe when He is silent. So, if you're standing in the dark right now, trembling, wondering if you've been forgotten, I want you to hear me clearly. You have not been forgotten. You've been hidden. And there's a difference. Hidden things aren't discarded. They're preserved. Diamonds are formed in darkness. Seeds grow underground. And Jesus Himself spent years unseen before heaven unveiled His glory. The silence is not your ending. It's your gestation. You're not lost. You're incubating. God hides His greatest works until the appointed time, and that's what He's doing with you. It's hard, I know. It feels unfair, I know. You want to be seen, to be understood, to know why He took you the long way. But He took you this way so that when you arrive, you'll be able to stay. because quick blessings without rooted character crumble under the weight of destiny. He's building endurance in you. He's teaching you to stand firm when the storms come. He's showing you how to find his heartbeat in the quiet. And one day soon, you'll look back on this wilderness and realize it was never punishment. It was preparation. But right now, while you're still walking through it, while your prayers feel like whispers into empty air, while the promises seem far away, I want you to remember this. God's silence is not his absence. It's his shadow. He's closer than he's ever been, doing his deepest work in the dark. You may not see it, but heaven is busy on your behalf. You may not feel it, but love is wrapping around every fragment of your being, whispering, "Hold on. Don't let go. I'm still here." And as the dawn begins to break, as the first light begins to rise in your spirit, you'll start to understand that what you thought was divine distance was actually divine protection. Because sometimes God has to hide to heal you. Sometimes he withdraws not to punish, but to perform spiritual surgery too delicate for an audience. Every unanswered question, every unfulfilled desire, every delay, it's part of that healing. He's removing the old wounds, the toxic attachments, the voices that distort his. He's restoring your capacity to love, to trust, to feel again. And though right now all you can see is the emptiness, there will come a day when you'll see the masterpiece he was painting in the dark. You'll see how every heartbreak was a brushstroke, how every silence was a shadow that made the light shine brighter. That day is coming. You just have to hold on long enough to see it, because even when you don't feel his love, you're swimming in it. Even when your mind doubts, your spirit knows. And if you only knew how deeply you're loved right now, how heaven watches over you, how angels encamp around your tears, you would never doubt again. This silence, this stillness, this strange space of in-between, it's holy ground. And right here, right now, you're standing in the middle of your becoming. And as the days blur into nights and the silence stretches longer than you ever imagined, something inside you begins to shift. At first, it's subtle, a dull ache turning into quiet surrender. You start to realize that maybe the point was never to get an answer, but to find peace even without one. That maybe the real miracle isn't that God speaks, but that your heart still listens when he doesn't. You see, this is where the divine love story deepens, where heaven teaches the chosen ones how to love without proof, how to trust without evidence, how to keep walking even when the path disappears beneath their feet. Because love that only thrives when seen is not yet perfected. And what God is doing in you right now is perfecting that love, not through comfort, but through contrast. You've felt the absence so that you can later recognize presence in places you never noticed before. You've been emptied so you can be filled in ways this world could never offer. You've been stripped of your illusions so that only truth remains. And that truth is this: you were never unloved, only unaware. Every hardship you've endured was a classroom for divine revelation. Every time someone walked away, heaven whispered, "Watch what I replace them with." Every time a door slammed, it wasn't rejection, it was protection from what could have derailed your calling. The isolation, the confusion, the waiting, it's all a setup for clarity. Because what's coming next requires a different version of you, one that knows love not as a fleeting emotion, but as an unshakable truth. The loneliness that once broke you is now birthing divine intimacy. God isolates before he elevates. And though it may seem cruel, that isolation is the only environment where revelation can truly grow. You've noticed it, how conversations no longer feed you, how company exhausts you, how solitude feels strangely sacred now. You've become sensitive to energy, to words, to spaces. You can't tolerate what you used to. That's not depression, that's transformation. You are shedding frequencies that no longer align with your new vibration. You are being recalibrated to heaven's rhythm. This is the loneliness of the chosen, the divine classroom where God himself becomes your only companion, where his silence becomes your teacher and his presence becomes your language. You may look around and see nothing, but if you close your eyes, you'll start to feel it. The pulse of divine purpose beating beneath every disappointment. Elijah knew that silence. After calling down fire from heaven, he found himself alone. In a cave, hiding, broken, terrified, convinced his mission was over. But that's where God whispered, not in the wind, not in the earthquake, not in the fire, but in the still small voice that could only be heard in isolation. And that's what's happening to you. You've come to the end of your own strength, so you can learn to hear what flesh could never comprehend. It's in this stillness that God begins to whisper again, not as he once did, but deeper, gentler, more personal. You're not losing your connection, it's evolving. The way you used to feel him is gone because he's training you to perceive him in everything, in the quiet, in the pauses, in the in-between. You're learning to find him in the breath between your tears, in the rhythm of your heart, in the beauty of being still. This is divine maturity, the moment when faith transcends feeling. And yes, it's uncomfortable, growth always is, but soon you'll see that this season of hiddenness was not meant to punish you, but to preserve what's precious inside you. You see, God loves you too much to expose you prematurely. He hides you until your roots are deep enough to handle the weight of what's coming. Think of Joseph, forgotten in prison. Think of David, anointed but still tending sheep. Think of Jesus, 30 years hidden before 3 years revealed. Heaven hides its treasures until the time is right. And you, right now, are one of those treasures. The waiting is your womb of creation. The obscurity you hate is the shelter of divine development. You've been asking for breakthrough, but God has been giving you roots. Because before the light comes, the foundation must be secured. You can't stand tall in your next season if your character cracks under pressure. So he teaches you endurance. He teaches you humility. He teaches you to love even when it's not returned. Every delay is a sculptor's hand, chiseling away what's temporary so that what remains is eternal. That's why he didn't open that door when you wanted him to. That's why he let them leave. That's why he allowed what broke you, because he saw the version of you that would rise from those ashes, unshakable and luminous. He's not interested in temporary relief. He's committed to eternal restoration. And sometimes love looks like loss before it looks like life. So if you're in that space where everything seems to be slipping away, hold on. It's not ending, it's evolving. You're not being reduced, you're being refined. God's love is a consuming fire, and right now it's burning away every false attachment, every lie you believed about yourself, every limitation you accepted as truth. This is what divine purification feels like. It's raw, it's relentless, it's holy. You won't recognize yourself after this, and that's the point. The identity you once wore can't fit where you're going. The version of you that constantly needed reassurance is being replaced by the one who walks in quiet confidence, knowing that even in silence, love surrounds them. And when you emerge from this season, you won't have to prove anything. Your presence will speak for itself. Because those who are truly loved don't strive to be seen, they radiate. And you, beloved, are being prepared to radiate a light the world has not yet seen. It may look like nothing's happening, but heaven is orchestrating your unveiling behind the veil of delay. Don't rush it, don't resist it. The cocoon looks like confinement, but it's where wings are made. And when you break through, every ounce of pain will make sense. You'll realize that the loneliness that once felt unbearable was actually the womb of your destiny. You'll see that the silence was not a sign that God left. It was proof that He trusted you enough to grow in the dark. So breathe. Let the waiting do its work. Let the hiddenness humble you, soften you, strengthen you, because soon the whisper will come, the one that says, now. The one that turns the pain into purpose, the silence into song. But for now, rest, stay hidden, stay faithful, stay still. Because the story is not over, it's just beginning to unfold. And then one morning, without warning, something within you shifts. The air feels different, not because your circumstances have changed, but because you have. The storm that once terrified you now feels strangely quiet, like a teacher bowing before its best student. You don't even notice at first, but the things that used to break you no longer hold power. The anxiety that used to tighten your chest now dissolves before it can even rise. The old patterns knock, but you no longer answer. This is what rebirth feels like, not a moment, but a gradual unveiling. You've walked through fire, and somehow your spirit didn't burn. It became gold. You've faced rejection, and instead of resentment, compassion grew in its place. You've seen your plans fall apart, only to realize they were never big enough for the vision God had in mind. And now, your heart beats with a quiet authority, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself. You've entered the sacred calm after the storm. But here's the mystery of it. The peace you feel isn't because life got easier. It's because you stopped fighting what was always meant to shape you. You finally surrendered, not out of defeat, but out of understanding. You realized that the journey was never about controlling outcomes, but about becoming aligned with divine timing. You learned that what was delayed wasn't denied. It was being designed, and now, heaven whispers again, but this time it doesn't sound like instruction. It sounds like remembrance. You were always meant for this, the voice says. You were never forgotten, only prepared. You see, the chosen ones often mistake preparation for punishment. They cry out in the wilderness, thinking God has gone silent, when in truth, He's been fine-tuning their spirit for the call they didn't yet understand. That's what your silence was. It wasn't abandonment, it was alignment. The loneliness wasn't emptiness, it was recalibration. You were being positioned for people who speak your language, for doors that fit your key, for battles designed to reveal your anointing. You had to be removed from the noise so you could finally hear heaven's frequency. And now, as you stand at the threshold of your next chapter, you'll notice something miraculous. What once drained you now fuels you. What once frightened you now excites you. What once confused you now makes perfect sense. You've become fluent in divine timing. You can feel when something is for you and when it's not. You sense when to move and when to wait. You no longer chase, you attract. You no longer beg, you believe. Because now you understand that being chosen was never about being favored above others. It was about being refined before others. You were selected for surrender, trained through trial, and elevated through endurance. The pain that once made you question your worth was actually the proof of your worth. Heaven doesn't waste fire on the uncalled. You were forged because you're meant to carry something eternal. And now, you're about to walk into a season where everything you learned in silence will echo loudly through your life. The very people who doubted your resilience will witness your restoration. The ones who dismissed your dreams will see you living them without bitterness. The doors that closed will make sense when you walk through the ones that were custom built for you. This is not revenge, it's revelation. God is revealing who you are, not through noise, but through undeniable evidence. You won't need to prove your transformation. Your peace will speak it. You won't need to defend your journey. Your glow will testify. Because true elevation doesn't need announcement, it just arrives. And when it does, everything aligns. Opportunities will come that match your healed frequency. Conversations will flow effortlessly because they're no longer built on survival, but on purpose. People will recognize something divine in you, not because you've changed your words, but because your energy has changed your world. You've become a living altar of grace. You've learned to love without fear, to give without expectation, to rise without resentment. You've learned that peace is not the absence of storms, but the presence of God within them. And now that you've mastered the silence, heaven will trust you with sound again. You'll speak, and your words will carry weight. You'll act, and your steps will shift atmospheres. You'll move through rooms quietly, but those in spiritual tune will feel something holy when you pass. That's what divine authority feels like. Humble, not loud. Grounded, not grand. You've become what the process was always trying to create, a vessel fit for divine expression. And as this realization dawns on you, gratitude fills every corner of your being. Suddenly, even the pain makes sense. You find yourself thanking God for the very nights you once cursed. You thank Him for the losses that led to clarity, for the people who left, for the waiting that matured you. You understand now that everything was love, even what didn't feel like it. You were never being punished, you were being positioned. Every breakdown was a breaking open, every detour was divine direction, every silence was sacred conversation. And now, heaven smiles. Because the version of you standing here is not the one who began this journey. You are no longer searching for validation, you've become the validation. You no longer need signs, you are the sign. You no longer chase miracles, you are living proof of one. The world will see it soon, but you already feel it now. The peace that surpasses understanding, the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you're held, guided and loved beyond measure. You've become the reflection of divine timing, the embodiment of patience, the evidence of grace. This is what it means to be chosen, not to escape pain, but to be transformed by it, to walk through the valley and emerge carrying light, to be misunderstood, yet remain kind, to be broken, yet still believe. You, dear soul, have become the proof that faith works in silence, that love heals in hiddenness, and that destiny blooms in the dark. And as you lift your eyes to the horizon, you'll sense it, the next chapter calling your name, softly but surely. You're not walking into it alone. The same presence that kept you in the wilderness now walks beside you into the promise. The same God who hid you is now revealing you. And when the light hits your face again, the world won't just see a survivor, they'll see a vessel of glory, every tear redeemed, every delay explained, every silence turned into symphony. Because the story of the chosen ones was never about the pain, it was about the transformation born from it. And now, heaven whispers one final truth. You made it. You became who I saw when the world saw nothing. And as the light of this new awareness settles into your bones, you begin to realize something deeper than words can capture, that love was never distant, it was disguised. Every delay, every heartbreak, every unanswered prayer was a layer of divine affection wearing the mask of mystery. You start to see your entire past in reverse, and what once felt like abandonment now glows with divine fingerprints. You remember those nights when you cried, thinking God had forgotten you, but now you see He was sitting right beside you, holding your shaking spirit together with invisible hands. That quiet nudge that told you not to give up, that was Him. The unexpected peace that appeared after your worst breakdown, that was Him too. And when everything fell apart, but somehow you were still breathing, That was his love, holding the fragments of your life until you were ready to see what he was building out of them. The chosen ones learn this the hard way, because divine love isn't soft at first. It's refining. It comes not to pamper your comfort, but to purify your calling. It tears down what's false to make room for what's true. That's why it felt like God was taking things from you. But in reality, he was freeing you. He removed people who couldn't stay, plans that couldn't stretch, and identities that couldn't survive your next level. His love wasn't punishing you, it was protecting your purpose. And the strange thing is, now that you've lived through it, you wouldn't change it. You wouldn't rewrite the chapters of pain, because they taught you what comfort never could. They taught you how to feel God in the silence, how to trust when you couldn't see, and how to love even when love seemed impossible. That's the kind of wisdom that only the wilderness can give. It's the kind of strength that only brokenness can build. And now every scar on your soul feels sacred, like scripture written in human experience. You've become a living testimony of what divine love can do when it chooses someone completely and won't let go no matter how many times they fall apart. This is the point in the journey where your perspective shifts from asking, "Why me?" to whispering, "Thank you." Because now you see that being chosen was never a privilege. It was a process. It meant being stripped, stretched, and shaped until your soul matched the vibration of heaven. It meant being called out of the crowd so you could learn to stand, alone with God. It meant being misunderstood by people so you could be understood by the divine. And when you look back at those moments when you thought you lost everything, you realize those were the moments you actually found him. That's why the chosen ones always carry a strange glow, because they've walked through hell but still look like heaven. Their eyes carry stories of both tears and triumph. Their voices tremble with both pain and praise, and their hearts love deeper because they've known what it's like to be unloved. They forgive quickly, not because it's easy, but because they've been forgiven much. They show grace because they've been shown grace. And every step they take now feels intentional, sacred, guided. Because once you've truly felt how deeply God loves you, you can never go back to living like you're unloved. You start making decisions not out of fear, but out of faith. You stop chasing validation because you know who called you. You stop explaining yourself because you understand that your assignment doesn't require everyone's approval. It only requires your obedience. In this new awareness, even your relationship with pain changes. You stop seeing it as an enemy and start recognizing it as a messenger. Pain no longer defines you, it refines you. It tells you where healing still lives, where truth still hides, where surrender still calls. You stop running from it and start listening to it. And as you do, the fear that used to control you dissolves like mist under sunlight. You begin to understand what true freedom feels like, not the absence of struggle, but the absence of resistance to it. You trust the process, even when it hurts, because you know the potter never wastes clay. He molds it with precision, even when the pressure feels unbearable. The same hands that shape are the same hands that hold. The same fire that burns also forges. And so, you learn to rest in motion, to be at peace even while being stretched. But there's something else happening here, something sacred and hidden. God begins to restore what was lost, but not in the same form. He brings it back elevated, multiplied, purified. You start meeting people who mirror your healed self, not your broken one. You find yourself in environments that nurture your purpose, not drain it. You begin to see opportunities flow toward you that once ran from you. This isn't coincidence, it's divine reciprocity. The universe recognizes the frequency of someone who finally remembers who they are, and the energy you once poured into survival now becomes creative power. You speak, and things align. You pray, and heaven responds differently, not because God changed, but because you did. You're no longer praying from fear of loss, but from faith in abundance. You're no longer asking for signs of love. You're living as the evidence of it, and that's when it hits you. This love isn't something God gives. It's something He is. It's not conditional. It's constant. It's not earned. It's embodied. You realize you were never chasing love. You were returning to it. You were learning to see it in every sunrise, every breath, every small mercy that followed disaster. You begin to find divinity in the ordinary, the stillness of morning light, the laughter of strangers, the whisper of wind that somehow feels like reassurance. You start to see that heaven has been talking all along, not through thunder, but through tenderness. The world becomes holy again, not because it changed, but because your eyes did. But even in this revelation, there's a subtle warning, not to forget where you came from. Because the enemy will always try to make you forget how far you've come, to convince you that you're still the person who struggled to believe they were loved. Yet you're not. You've been redefined. The version of you that doubted has been replaced by the one who knows. And now your mission shifts. It's no longer just about surviving. It's about shining. You become a mirror for others who are still in their wilderness. Your story becomes medicine. Your voice becomes light. Every time you speak truth, someone's darkness softens. Every time you extend compassion, heaven expands its reach through you. This is what being chosen was really for, not to sit on a throne, but to serve through scars. You'll begin to notice divine appointments, moments that feel too aligned to be random. The person who messages you at just the right time, the song that plays when you're questioning your purpose, the sudden peace that arrives before an answer. These are heaven's way of saying, I'm still here, I never left. And now that your spirit is tuned, you'll hear it everywhere, in silence, in laughter, in your own heartbeat. God's love isn't an event, it's a frequency. And now that you're vibrating in sync with it, you'll start manifesting the kind of life that reflects divine order. Not a life without problems, but a life where even problems serve purpose. And yet, the most beautiful part of all this isn't the external blessing. It's the internal one. You wake up every day feeling anchored, even when the waves rise. You no longer need certainty to feel safe, because love itself has become your safety. You've learned to rest in what you cannot see, and that's the highest form of faith. That's when the chosen ones truly step into their power, when they stop needing proof that God loves them and start living like it's already settled. Because it is. It always was. And as you look back one last time at the path that brought you here, you'll feel tears form, not from sadness, but from recognition. Because now you see it all, the beauty, the pain, the silence, the shaping. It was all love, wearing different faces. The same love that found you in the fire now walks with you into the promise. And for the first time, you don't just believe it, you know it. And now that this knowing has settled into your spirit, something extraordinary begins to happen. You start to embody the love you once only sought. You carry it in your voice, in your presence, in your patience with others. There's a softness to you now, but also a strength that feels ancient, like something eternal is breathing through you. You no longer react to the world the same way because you finally understand that most people are hurting from the same illusion you once believed, that they are unloved, unseen, and unworthy. But you've been through too much light to fall for that lie again. You know now that every soul is born of the same flame, every heart is a reflection of the same source, and that love, divine, infinite love, is the thread that connects everything. You start seeing God in faces you used to overlook, hearing his whisper in moments that used to frustrate you. Even when someone tries to harm you, you don't take it personally anymore because you recognize that pain speaks through people. You understand that their cruelty isn't truth. It's a cry for healing. So you bless them quietly, knowing that forgiveness isn't weakness, but wisdom. You've learned that holding on to bitterness blocks blessings, and you've been through too much darkness to risk losing your light again. And yet, this isn't a passive peace. It's powerful, deliberate. You've become a guardian of your own energy. You no longer hand your peace over to chaos. You've learned that boundaries are sacred, not selfish. You no longer need to fight for your worth. You protect it by being selective with your access. That's what love teaches. That you can be open without being exposed, giving without being drained, compassionate without being consumed. You understand now that God's love was never meant to make you a doormat. It was meant to make you a doorway, a passage for grace to flow through you, not a pit for people to throw their pain into. You've become that, a vessel of divine flow. You notice how conversations shift when you speak, how rooms feel lighter when you enter, how people begin to soften around you because they sense something sacred, even if they can't name it. They feel the peace that you fought for. They see the calm that cost you countless storms. You've become what God was shaping all along, a living reflection of his love, not in words, but in being. And now that love begins to ripple outward. It starts affecting the way you create, the way you dream, the way you move through time itself. The chosen ones begin to walk differently, not with arrogance, but with divine assurance. You walk like someone who knows they're never walking alone. You wake up with purpose humming beneath your ribs because you understand that your existence is not random. You were strategically placed in this generation for a reason, to bring light where confusion reigns, to embody love where fear dominates, to remind others through your life that God is not distant, he's dwelling within. This realization transforms how you see everything. Even the mundane feels holy now. You wash dishes and feel gratitude. You watch the sunrise and hear sermons in its silence. You speak with strangers and feel divine timing weaving through their words. It's as if the whole world has come alive again, because you've finally tuned in to the frequency it was always singing in. But this is also where the enemy tries to whisper again, not through fear this time, but through distraction. Because once you know who you are, the enemy can't defeat you. He can only try to divert you. He'll tempt you to forget, to get busy proving your worth again, to get caught up in noise that numbs your clarity. But you, chosen one, are too seasoned now to fall for it. You can sense when something's not for you. You can feel when peace withdraws. You can tell when God's not in a thing, and instead of forcing it, you release it. That's maturity, choosing stillness over struggle, discernment over desire, patience over panic. And the beauty of this level is that you no longer see waiting as punishment. You see it as partnership. You understand that divine timing is not a delay, it's precision. You've stopped measuring progress by movement and started measuring it by peace. You no longer ask, when will it happen? But how can I align with it? You've stopped chasing signs and started becoming them. And that's when the miraculous starts unfolding effortlessly. The very doors you once begged God to open begin to swing wide without you even knocking. People are drawn to your light, not because of what you do, but because of what you carry. You've become magnetic, not in ego, but in essence. Opportunities flow not because you're striving, but because you're aligned. You start realizing that the blessing was never external, it was internal. The external world is simply catching up to your internal frequency. That's what it means when Scripture says, "Seek first the kingdom of God," because the kingdom is within you. You've unlocked it through surrender, through silence, through trust. You've become the dwelling place of peace, the sanctuary of light, the voice of divine remembrance in a world that forgot. As this realization deepens, you begin to feel a new assignment stirring in your spirit. You sense that everything you've endured wasn't just for you. It was preparation to help others remember too. You've been trained in the language of empathy. You know how to speak to the broken because you were once shattered. You know how to comfort the lonely because you've known the ache of silence. You know how to lead with love because you've been led by it through darkness. This is why God trusted you with pain, because He knew you would turn it into compassion. You are becoming the kind of person that heaven can trust with influence, because your motives are now pure. You don't seek validation, you seek impact. You don't crave fame, you crave transformation. You're not chasing followers, you're guiding souls. And because of that, the anointing on your life grows stronger. Doors that were closed for years suddenly begin to open. People begin to find you, not because you marketed yourself, but because the light in you became a signal. The world is drawn to authenticity, and your scars have made you real. And now you begin to operate in divine flow, where effort feels like ease, and creation feels like communion. You're not striving anymore, you're surrendering daily. You're not hustling, you're harmonizing with heaven's rhythm. That's when your creativity expands, your voice deepens, your intuition sharpens, your sense of timing becomes almost prophetic. You just know when to move, when to rest, when to speak, when to wait. You've become a co-creator with God, moving in sync with divine will. And the beauty of it all, you're not trying to control outcomes anymore because you've seen what happens when you let go. Miracles unfold in ways logic could never plan. You've realized that love was never meant to be understood. It was meant to be trusted. But even as this new season blossoms, God keeps you humble. He reminds you where the power came from, where the grace was born. He allows moments of silence still, not as punishment, but as preservation. Because too much noise can pull even the faithful off course. And so you learn to remain hidden even in your elevation. You do not seek to be seen, you seek to serve. You understand now that the true mark of divine maturity is not how high you rise, but how deeply you stay grounded. That's why your blessings now don't inflate your ego. They expand your gratitude. You look at what you have, at who you've become, and your only response is worship. Not the loud kind, but the quiet kind. The kind where your life itself becomes a prayer. And through that posture, God keeps pouring, not just material blessings, but peace, wisdom, and revelation. You begin to notice that your presence alone begins to shift things. People who are anxious around everyone else find calm when they're near you. Rooms that feel heavy lighten up when you walk in. That's not coincidence. That's frequency. That's divine love radiating through your healed soul. You've become a walking reminder of what's possible when someone refuses to give up in the wilderness. You are the evidence that God can take ashes and create art, that He can turn loneliness into leadership, and that He can transform pain into purpose. You are the living proof that being chosen was never about being superior. It was about being surrendered enough to be shaped into love itself. And as this truth sinks deeper, you realize this love isn't something you carry for yourself. It's a light you must now share. You were hidden so you could emerge as a beacon. You were silenced so your voice could become thunder. You were broken so your words could heal. And now, as the sun sets on the old version of you, you feel heaven whisper again, this time not as comfort, but as commission. Go, shine, remind them, and you know exactly what that means. So you begin to move again, but this time not out of fear, not out of striving, but out of stillness. The kind of stillness that comes from knowing who walks beside you. Every step you take now carries intention, as if the ground itself recognizes your anointing. You're not rushing anymore because you've learned that divine timing is a rhythm, not a race. The chosen ones don't move fast, they move faithfully. And that's what you're doing now, walking in step with heaven, carrying peace like a weapon and love like armor. There's a quiet authority about you now. You no longer announce what you're about to do because you've learned that the greatest power doesn't need validation. It just manifests. You've become what the waiting was molding, a vessel of divine precision, a mirror of holy patience. People who once doubted you will begin to sense something different about you. They'll ask, "What changed?" And you'll smile softly because the answer isn't something you can explain in words. It's something only experienced in the fire. They'll see the light in your eyes, the calm in your energy, the way you no longer react to the storms that once consumed you. You've become unshakable, not because life stopped testing you, but because your faith stopped breaking under pressure. You've learned that the storms don't end, you just rise above them. And as you continue this walk, you'll notice how heaven begins to orchestrate things around you. Doors open in silence. Connections align like constellations. You find yourself in the right place at the right time, speaking words that weren't rehearsed but feel divinely timed. That's because you're no longer forcing outcomes. You're flowing with purpose. You've become synchronized with grace. The same spirit that once led you into isolation now leads you into elevation. But this elevation isn't loud. It's sacred. It's not about being seen. It's about being sent. You're not here to prove your worth. You're here to fulfill your assignment. And that assignment isn't always glamorous. Sometimes it's as simple as comforting a stranger, listening without judgment, or speaking a word of hope to someone who's drowning in despair. You've become an instrument of divine intervention without even realizing it, because love has become your language now. And when you speak from love, heaven listens. When you act from compassion, heaven moves. When you forgive instead of retaliate, heaven expands its kingdom through you. That's how powerful your transformation has become. It's no longer just about your journey. It's about how your light shifts the world around you. But don't mistake this season of peace for the absence of warfare. The enemy still prowls, only now he attacks differently, not through destruction, but through distraction. He'll try to cloud your clarity, dull your discernment, make you doubt the voice you've learned to trust. He'll whisper that maybe it was all in your head, that maybe you misunderstood God's plan, but you've been trained too well now to fall for that. You know the difference between confusion and conviction. You know the difference between fear's voice and faith's whisper. You've learned that doubt is the enemy's final attempt to block what's already been decreed, and so you stand firm, not by shouting, but by staying still. You've learned that stillness is a form of warfare, that peace itself terrifies darkness, because when you refuse to panic, you starve, the enemy of power. When you choose trust over worry, you break spiritual cycles. That's what divine maturity looks like. You've become untouchable, not because you're invincible, but because you're immovable. There's something majestic about this kind of surrender. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. You've finally stopped fighting battles that aren't yours to fight. You've stopped trying to convince people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You've stopped explaining your calling to those who aren't meant to walk with you. You've released the need to be accepted because you've been chosen by the one who matters most. That's where your peace comes from, divine validation. You no longer need applause because you've learned to be sustained by approval that comes from above. The same silence that once broke you now builds you. The same solitude that once hurt now heals. You can sit alone for hours and still feel surrounded because presence has replaced people. This is what it means to walk with God, not in religion, but in relationship. Every breath becomes prayer. Every moment becomes sacred. Every step feels guided. And slowly, as you walk deeper into this awareness, something begins to bloom within you. A calling that feels larger than life, but perfectly aligned with your spirit. You realize that your story, every wound, every waiting season, every night of confusion, was preparing you to speak to others who are still there. You are being called to be the voice for those who can't yet articulate their pain, the light for those who can't yet see the path, the hope for those who believe God has gone silent. Your testimony isn't just your story, it's someone else's survival guide. And you understand now that the very pain you prayed away is what gave your purpose power. That's why the chosen ones suffer deeply, because they are destined to heal deeply. They are trusted with tears because they're meant to carry comfort. They are shaped by storms because they're meant to calm them in others. You are one of them. You are the evidence that God still works through broken vessels. And so you start to speak differently. You no longer tell people what they should do. You remind them who they already are. You don't point them to religion, you point them to relationship. You teach through experience, not through pride. You guide from scars, not from thrones. And that's what makes your light irresistible. It's real. People can feel authenticity. They can sense anointing. It's not about fancy words or titles. It's about presence. When you walk into a room, heaven enters with you. When you speak, chains start to loosen in unseen ways. Because when love speaks, darkness listens. When light moves, shadows bow. You've become that, a walking manifestation of divine authority clothed in humility. And it's not because you tried to become powerful. It's because you surrendered enough to let God's power flow through you. Now you understand what Jesus meant when he said, "My yoke is easy and my burden is light." It doesn't mean life becomes effortless. It means your effort becomes aligned. You no longer carry things that aren't yours. You no longer fight to be understood. You no longer chase what's fading. You move with grace, guided by unseen hands. You've entered what some call divine flow, a state of surrender so deep that everything begins to work together for your good, not because circumstances changed, but because your consciousness did. You're no longer reacting to the world. The world is responding to your vibration. You walk in rooms and opportunities find you. You sit in stillness and answers come. You pray in silence and things shift. You've become what you were searching for, a conduit of love itself. And yet, through all of this, you remain humble. You remember the nights that taught you gratitude, the heartbreak that softened your heart, the waiting that shaped your patience. You carry your past not as shame but as testimony. You no longer resent your scars. You honor them as proof of survival, as reminders of grace. Every mark tells a story of divine intervention. Every healed wound speaks of God's consistency. You realize that even your weaknesses were part of His plan, because they made room for His strength. The very areas you once hid in shame now carry your greatest power, because vulnerability is the bridge that connects hearts. You've learned that love doesn't demand perfection. It demands presence. And now your life is full of it. Presence, peace, purpose. The world may not understand it. Some will question your calm, your glow, your peace in chaos. But you won't need to explain. The proof is in your presence. The light will speak louder than words. Your very existence will become a sermon. And though you may never know how, many lives your energy touches, heaven will. Because your journey has become a ripple of redemption. You've stepped into your divine role as a carrier of love, a living message that says, God never left. And as you move forward, you'll feel heaven walking with you, guiding your words, blessing your hands, multiplying your impact. The same love that rescued you is now reaching others through you. You've become the embodiment of the message that once saved your own soul. And somewhere deep in your spirit, you'll feel it, a whisper that says, it's time. Time to rise fully into who you were always meant to be. Time to walk in love without fear. Time to stand boldly in truth without apology. Time to live, not as someone waiting for love, but as someone overflowing with it. Because when the chosen ones finally realize how deeply they are loved, they stop doubting, they stop running, and they start shining. And now, dear one, that light in you is ready to illuminate everything around you. So you begin to move again, but this time not out of fear, not out of striving, but out of stillness. The kind of stillness that comes from knowing who walks beside you. Every step you take now carries intention, as if the ground itself recognizes your anointing. You're not rushing anymore because you've learned that divine timing is a rhythm, not a race. The chosen ones don't move fast, they move faithfully. And that's what you're doing now, walking in step with heaven, carrying peace like a weapon and love like armor. There's a quiet authority about you now. You no longer announce what you're about to do because you've learned that the greatest power doesn't need validation. It just manifests. You've become what the waiting was molding, a vessel of divine precision, a mirror of holy patience. People who once doubted you will begin to sense something different about you. They'll ask, what changed? And you'll smile softly because the answer isn't something you can explain in words. It's something only experienced in the fire. They'll see the light in your eyes, the calm in your energy, the way you no longer react to the storms that once consumed you. You've become unshakable, not because life stopped testing you, but because your faith stopped breaking under pressure. You've learned that the storms don't end, you just rise above them. And as you continue this walk, you'll notice how heaven begins to orchestrate things around you. Doors open in silence, connections align like constellations. You find yourself in the right place at the right time, speaking words that weren't rehearsed but feel divinely timed. That's because you're no longer forcing outcomes, you're flowing with purpose. You've become synchronized with grace. The same spirit that once led you into isolation now leads you into elevation. But this elevation isn't loud, it's sacred. It's not about being seen, it's about being sent. You're not here to prove your worth, you're here to fulfill your assignment. And that assignment isn't always glamorous. Sometimes it's as simple as comforting a stranger, listening without judgment, or speaking a word of hope to someone who's drowning in despair. You've become an instrument of divine intervention without even realizing it, because love has become your language now. And when you speak from love, heaven listens. When you act from compassion, heaven moves. When you forgive instead of retaliate, heaven expands its kingdom through you. That's how powerful your transformation has become. It's no longer just about your journey. It's about how your light shifts the world around you. But don't mistake this season of peace for the absence of warfare. The enemy still prowls, only now he attacks differently, not through destruction, but through distraction. He'll try to cloud your clarity, dull your discernment, make you doubt the voice you've learned to trust. He'll whisper that maybe it was all in your head, that maybe you misunderstood God's plan. But you've been trained too well now to fall for that. You know the difference between confusion and conviction. You know the difference between fear's voice and faith's whisper. You've learned that doubt is the enemy's final attempt to block what's already been decreed, And so you stand firm, not by shouting, but by staying still. You've learned that stillness is a form of warfare, that peace itself terrifies darkness, because when you refuse to panic, you starve, the enemy of power. When you choose trust over worry, you break spiritual cycles. That's what divine maturity looks like. You've become untouchable, not because you're invincible, but because you're immovable. There's something majestic about this kind of surrender. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. You've finally stopped fighting battles that aren't yours to fight. You've stopped trying to convince people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You've stopped explaining your calling to those who aren't meant to walk with you. You've released the need to be accepted because you've been chosen by the one who matters most. That's where your peace comes from, divine validation. You no longer need applause because you've learned to be sustained by approval that comes from above. The same silence that once broke you now builds you. The same solitude that once hurt now heals. You can sit alone for hours and still feel surrounded because presence has replaced people. This is what it means to walk with God, not in religion, but in relationship. Every breath becomes prayer. Every moment becomes sacred. Every step feels guided. And slowly, as you walk deeper into this awareness, something begins to bloom within you. A calling that feels larger than life, but perfectly aligned with your spirit. You realize that your story, every wound, every waiting season, every night of confusion, was preparing you to speak to others who are still there. You are being called to be the voice for those who can't yet articulate their pain, the light for those who can't yet see the path, the hope for those who believe God has gone silent. Your testimony isn't just your story, it's someone else's survival guide. And you understand now that the very pain you prayed away is what gave your purpose power. That's why the chosen ones suffer deeply, because they are destined to heal deeply. They are trusted with tears because they're meant to carry comfort. They are shaped by storms because they're meant to calm them in others. You are one of them. You are the evidence that God still works through broken vessels. And so you start to speak differently. You no longer tell people what they should do. You remind them who they already are. You don't point them to religion, you point them to relationship. You teach through experience, not through pride. You guide from scars, not from thrones. And that's what makes your light irresistible. It's real. People can feel authenticity. They can sense anointing. It's not about fancy words or titles. It's about presence. When you walk into a room, heaven enters with you. When you speak, chains start to loosen in unseen ways. Because when love speaks, darkness listens. When light moves, shadows bow. You've become that, a walking manifestation of divine authority clothed in humility. And it's not because you tried to become powerful. It's because you surrendered enough to let God's power flow through you. Now you understand what Jesus meant when he said, "My yoke is easy and my burden is light." It doesn't mean life becomes effortless. It means your effort becomes aligned. You no longer carry things that aren't yours. You no longer fight to be understood. You no longer chase what's fading. You move with grace, guided by unseen hands. You've entered what some call divine flow, a state of surrender so deep that everything begins to work together for your good, not because circumstances changed, but because your consciousness did. You're no longer reacting to the world. The world is responding to your vibration. You walk in rooms and opportunities find you. You sit in stillness and answers come. You pray in silence and things shift. You've become what you were searching for, a conduit of love itself. And yet, through all of this, you remain humble. You remember the nights that taught you gratitude, the heartbreak that softened your heart, the waiting that shaped your patience. You carry your past not as shame but as testimony. You no longer resent your scars. You honor them as proof of survival, as reminders of grace. Every mark tells a story of divine intervention. Every healed wound speaks of God's consistency. You realize that even your weaknesses were part of His plan, because they made room for His strength. The very areas you once hid in shame now carry your greatest power, because vulnerability is the bridge that connects hearts. You've learned that love doesn't demand perfection, it demands presence. And now your life is full of it. Presence, peace, purpose. The world may not understand it. Some will question your calm, your glow, your peace in chaos. But you won't need to explain. The proof is in your presence. The light will speak louder than words. Your very existence will become a sermon. And though you may never know how, many lives your energy touches, heaven will. Because your journey has become a ripple of redemption. You've stepped into your divine role as a carrier of love, a living message that says, God never left. And as you move forward, you'll feel heaven walking with you, guiding your words, blessing your hands, multiplying your impact. The same love that rescued you is now reaching others through you. You've become the embodiment of the message that once saved your own soul. And somewhere deep in your spirit, you'll feel it, a whisper that says, it's time. Time to rise fully into who you were always meant to be. Time to walk in love without fear. Time to stand boldly in truth without apology. Time to live, not as someone waiting for love, but as someone overflowing with it. Because when the chosen ones finally realize how deeply they are loved, they stop doubting, they stop running, and they start shining. And now, dear one, that light in you is ready to illuminate everything around you. And now, as the next chapter unfolds, something within you begins to expand, not physically, but spiritually. It feels like your soul is stretching to fit the magnitude of the destiny that's calling you. You sense it in the quiet hours, in the moments when the world sleeps, but your heart beats in rhythm with eternity. You can almost hear heaven whispering your name differently now, not as one who is waiting, but as one who is ready. The waiting room has turned into a war room, and the silence that once hurt now sounds like strategy. Everything that confused you before starts to make sense. Every closed door becomes a clue. Every delay, a divine disguise. You realize that what you thought was punishment was really positioning, that the detours weren't diversions, they were directions. Every no was heaven's way of saying not yet. Every heartbreak was God's way of making room for alignment. You look back now not with regret, but with revelation. You can trace the fingerprints of God across every season that once broke you. The pain had purpose. The losses were lessons. The wilderness wasn't empty. It was sacred ground. This is the stage where the chosen ones begin to operate differently. You've stopped reacting emotionally to things that used to trigger you. You've stopped begging for clarity and started trusting the unfolding. You no longer seek signs because you are one. You embody faith now, calm in chaos, light in darkness, certainty in uncertainty. The spiritual weight you carry isn't visible to the eye, but heaven recognizes it. Angels respond to your movement now because your obedience carries authority. You've become dangerous to the darkness because you no longer panic when it's quiet. You've realized that silence is where strategies are born. You don't need to prove your power, you just need to remain in presence. That's where miracles happen, in the space between surrender and obedience. As your awareness deepens, you start noticing how God's timing is woven into everything. You'll walk into rooms you once prayed for and feel an odd calm because you understand now. It was never about the room, it was about who you became on the way there. You don't chase opportunities anymore. They magnetize to you. You're not desperate for attention. Your energy commands it without effort. You're not trying to be seen, you're trying to serve. This shift confuses people who only knew your old self. They expect the version of you who explained, who overgave, who doubted, but that version no longer exists. You've been reborn, not by circumstance, but by revelation. You've learned the difference between being busy and being productive, between being needed and being chosen, between being popular and being purposeful. You've chosen the narrow path, the one where peace matters more than applause, where truth weighs more than comfort. And as you live from this divine center, your surroundings begin to change too. People start falling away, not because of hate, but because of misalignment. You'll notice it. Conversations that used to excite you now feel shallow. Spaces that once felt safe now feel small. It's not arrogance, it's evolution. You're not better than anyone, but you're not meant to stay where God has already called you out of. The chosen ones always feel this tension, the pull between where they are and where they're meant to go. And so, you'll learn to let go gracefully. You'll bless people as they leave, even those who left you in pieces, because you finally understand that not everyone was meant to go where you're headed. Some were lessons, not lifetimes. Some were seasons, not destinies. Forgiveness becomes your strength now, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. You'll stop carrying bitterness and start carrying wisdom. You'll stop expecting closure and start creating peace. And just when you think you've reached the peak of your transformation, God will begin to stretch you again, not to break you, but to expand your capacity for love, grace, and faith. You'll find yourself being called to places that intimidate your old self, opportunities that require a bigger version of you. You'll be asked to step out again, not in fear, but in faith, because the elevation you're stepping into won't look like comfort. It'll look like calling. You'll be required to lead when you still feel unqualified. You'll be asked to speak when your voice still shakes. You'll be placed in rooms that feel too big, but that's how you'll know it's divine. Heaven doesn't promote you when you're ready. It promotes you when you're prepared. And you've been prepared through pain, patience, and persistence. Every silent night built the strength you'll now need in the spotlight. Every unseen battle became the armor that now protects your purpose. The world is about to see what heaven already declared. But don't be fooled. This revelation isn't about fame or recognition. It's about responsibility. To carry light in a world that loves darkness is no small task. It takes discernment, humility, and a heart that beats in sync with heaven's rhythm. You'll be tempted to rush, to overdo, to impress. But remember, divine flow isn't frantic. When you move in obedience, you move in power. You don't have to force what's already yours. You don't have to chase what's been promised. You simply remain in alignment, and alignment attracts everything that's meant for you. You'll start noticing it more often now. Divine coincidences that aren't coincidences at all. The right message appearing at the right moment. The right person showing up when you least expect it. The right opportunity unfolding without you striving. That's how you know you're walking in purpose. When life starts partnering with you. And through it all, you'll remain grounded. Because you remember what it felt like to have nothing but faith. You'll never forget the wilderness that trained your vision. You'll never forget the tears that watered your roots. You'll never forget the silence that taught you to hear. That memory will keep you humble. It will remind you that every miracle you experience is a result of grace, not performance. You'll carry that humility like a crown, quiet, unseen, but radiant. People will call it peace. Heaven calls it glory. And as you walk in that glory, you'll begin to influence atmospheres. You'll enter spaces heavy with tension, and your very presence will shift the energy. You'll speak life into brokenness without trying. You'll remind people of God's nearness without quoting a single verse, because you are living proof of divine transformation. You are evidence that pain can produce purpose, that heartbreak can birth healing, that endings can turn into awakenings. But with great light comes great resistance. You'll notice it. Subtle attacks, distractions disguised as opportunities, people testing your peace, situations challenging your discernment. Don't panic. It's confirmation that your light is effective. The greater your impact, the more darkness will attempt to distort your focus. But remember, the devil doesn't attack the empty. He attacks the anointed. And you are anointed. You've earned your wisdom in the wilderness. You've built your strength in silence. You've anchored your faith through storms. Now, you carry an authority that can't be imitated. It can only be cultivated. And so, when attacks come, you'll no longer respond with fear. You'll smile, knowing that resistance is proof of relevance. You'll thank God for trusting you with warfare, because He wouldn't allow it if you weren't equipped for it. This is the point in your journey where miracles become natural. You'll pray less from desperation and more from alignment. You'll speak things and they'll manifest. You'll dream things and they'll begin to unfold. You'll sense heaven moving before you even ask, because you're no longer just believing in miracles. You've become one. The same grace that carried you through the valley is now elevating you to the mountain. But this mountain isn't for boasting, it's for broadcasting. Broadcasting love, truth, and hope to those still wandering in their own wilderness. You are their reminder that the story doesn't end in pain, that silence isn't rejection, that waiting isn't punishment. You are proof that God never wastes a season, never wastes a tear, never wastes a heart that refuses to quit. And as you stand in this moment between what was and what's about to be, take a deep breath. Feel the peace that surrounds you now. This isn't the end of your journey. It's the unveiling of your purpose. You were never waiting for something to begin. You were being shaped for something divine. And now, the world will see what heaven has known all along, that you are chosen, prepared, anointed, and unstoppable. The path ahead may still twist and turn, but your spirit is steady, your heart is healed, and your purpose is clear. You've become what God intended, living revelation of love. And now, as the final veil begins to lift, there's a sacred stillness that falls upon your spirit. Not the stillness of emptiness, but the stillness of arrival. You can feel it deep inside you, this holy awareness that everything that once broke you has now built you. The tears, the silence, the seasons where you felt forgotten, they were never wasted. They were the language of heaven sculpting your soul into something eternal. You're not the same person who began this journey. The version of you that once cried for understanding has now become the version that walks with wisdom. You no longer look to the sky asking, "Why me, God?" Because now you understand. It had to be you. You were chosen not because you were perfect, but because you were willing to endure the breaking long enough to be reborn. You were chosen because heaven knew you would keep walking even when you couldn't see the path. And now, the light within you shines with a depth that only darkness could have produced. In this moment, the chosen ones begin to see everything with divine clarity. You start to realize that God was never far. He was hidden within the very moments you thought He was absent. The silence that felt unbearable was the sacred pause before transformation. The delay you despised was the divine alignment of every unseen piece. Every unanswered prayer was answered in a higher dimension, in a way you couldn't yet perceive. Now you see it. the way the heartbreak redirected you, the way the waiting refined you, the way isolation introduced you to your true self. Every time you thought you were losing, heaven was multiplying what mattered most: your faith, your vision, your heart. You begin to understand the profound truth that love was never something you had to earn. It was the essence of who you've always been. God didn't love you because you achieved, obeyed, or proved yourself. He loved you because you were His. That's it. And that love was so deep, so consuming, that He refused to let you remain small. So He allowed you to walk through pain, not to destroy you, but to awaken you to the infinite within you. There's a calm power rising in you now, one that doesn't need to speak loudly or move quickly. It's the power of knowing who you are and whose you are. You've stopped trying to convince people of your worth because your spirit has found peace in the truth that worth was never up for debate. You've stopped begging for acceptance because you've been accepted by the one who matters most. You've stopped running from yourself because you've learned to rest in your own divine becoming. That's the transformation the world can't always see, but heaven celebrates. You are the living embodiment of restoration. You are the echo of every prayer your ancestors whispered. You are the continuation of divine legacy in human form. The darkness tried to erase you, but it only refined your glow. The storm tried to drown you, but it only deepened your roots. The pain tried to silence you, but now your voice carries heaven's resonance. You've become unshakable, not because life got easier, but because your spirit grew stronger than your circumstances. And as this awakening unfolds, something remarkable happens. Love becomes your language. Not the fragile kind built on condition or approval, but divine love, the kind that transcends fear, judgment, and ego. You start seeing people differently. You no longer view them through the lens of what they did to you, but through the lens of what shaped them. Compassion flows effortlessly now, not because you've forgotten the pain, but because you've transformed it into purpose. You realize forgiveness isn't weakness, it's freedom. It's the act of releasing yourself from the prisons your past built. You forgive not because they apologized, but because you finally understand that no wound is worth carrying forever. You walk lighter now, freer, illuminated from within by grace that no one can take from you. And through that grace, you begin to embody the very thing you once sought: unconditional love. You've become the reflection of God's heart in human form, radiating peace without trying, giving light without depletion. You will find that the more you live from this place, the more divine synchronicities follow you. Doors will open that logic can't explain. People will appear who carry answers to prayers you never voiced. Opportunities will align in ways that make you pause and whisper, "Only God." Because that's how divine timing works. It's never late, it's never early, it's always precise. You've stepped into a rhythm now where heaven and earth move in harmony through your life. The delays are over, the lessons have been learned, and now your existence becomes a living prophecy. You'll start inspiring others without trying, simply by being. Your calm will heal others' chaos. Your peace will confront their fear. Your story will become their hope. That's the true purpose of a chosen one, not to escape pain, but to transform it so deeply that it becomes a map, for others to find the way home. But even in this divine alignment, you'll remain humble. You'll remember the nights you almost gave up, the prayers whispered through tears, the battles no one saw. That memory will keep your heart soft, your spirit grounded, your purpose pure, because you'll realize the glory was never yours to keep. It was always meant to reflect back to God. Every victory, every breakthrough, every moment of peace is a testimony of His love. You'll carry that awareness with reverence. You'll walk as light, not loud, but luminous, not boastful, but bold. not perfect, but purified. You'll walk as one who has seen the face of grace and lived to tell the story. And one day, you'll look around and realize you're no longer waiting for the next miracle. You are the miracle. The love that sustains you, the peace that protects you, the strength that guides you. It's all within. You no longer chase purpose, because you are purpose in motion. You no longer seek validation, because you are the evidence of divine favor. The same God who walked you through the valley now walks beside you on the mountaintop, and yet his voice remains the same, gentle, constant, unwavering. And when you hear him whisper, "You see now, my child, this is how deeply I've always loved you." Every tear you ever cried suddenly makes sense. Every waiting season turns into worship. Every heartbreak becomes holy. You realize he never left. He simply hid himself in the process so you could find him not outside of you, but within you. And in that realization, you finally rest. Not the restless kind that fears losing it all, but the peaceful kind that knows everything you are is already enough. You walk now with a sacred knowing that nothing, not distance, not failure, not fear, can separate you from divine love. That's what being chosen truly means. To be seen, to be shaped, to be sent, to be broken and rebuilt until your life becomes a vessel of divine reflection. You were never meant to just survive the storm. You were meant to become the calm that teaches others how to endure it. Your story isn't ending, it's evolving. You've stepped into eternal partnership with purpose, and that partnership will continue to unfold for as long as your soul breathes. So now, as you stand on this mountaintop of revelation, breathe in the peace that's been waiting for you all along. Feel the warmth of God's love wrap around every scar, every question, every moment of doubt. It's all sacred now. You are sacred now. And as the wind whispers through the quiet, you'll hear heaven echo softly through your soul. If you knew how deeply I loved you, you would never doubt again. That's the truth that will carry you through every season ahead. The same love that found you in your brokenness will sustain you in your becoming. The same light that led you through darkness will guide you into destiny. You've arrived, not at the end, but at the beginning of a new kind of peace. One that doesn't depend on what happens around you, because it lives within you. And that's where the story ends, not with applause, but with awakening. Not with noise, but with knowing. You are loved beyond measure. You always were. You always will be.